Hello everyone, my name is Edgar, and today we're going to be diving into the top 5 pros and cons of living in the US. With a bit of my own story mixed in, I'm going to be sharing the good, the bad, and how things stack up globally. Although many of you may know, living in the United States is not the best thing right now. Let's start with our first upside. Earning potential is very strong here in the United States, especially within tech, finance, and healthcare. If you look at the data, the United States places number 7 in the world for the average annual income, with the average annual income being $83,660. Now this sounds nice, but don't get me wrong, it comes at the cost of our living expenses. Now another thing the US really nails, at least compared to most of the world, is the quality of life and infrastructure. Now let me explain. If you think about it, most neighborhoods have reliable electricity, clean running water, fast internet, and grocery stores within 10 minutes. If your sink breaks, you could probably get a plumber within your house in a day, maybe a couple days, depending if it's a weekend or not. And this is especially true if you live in a major city like Chicago, New York, or LA. We live in a place where if you order something at 10 p.m., you can probably have it by the next day. Shout out to Prime. Not sponsored. In many parts of the world, though, shipping takes weeks, or sometimes you might even have to go hunt it down. And let's be real, we're spoiled by 24/7 stores, drive-thrus, and same-day grocery delivery. Japan takes the cake with this, because their 7-Eleven is fucking great. They have some of the best snacks I've ever had, but that's for another video. When I travel outside the US, especially in developing countries, I realize just how much I take these things for granted. Especially living in Mexico, having to turn on the hot water and then only for it to run out 2 minutes later, it sucked. It really did. But, coming back to the US, I realized how much I love having running water 24/7 and not having to do anything about it. Or calling a plumber, obviously. So yeah, our roads have potholes, internet lag sometimes, and I still curse at traffic pretty much all the time. But, we live in one of the most connected, convenient, and accessible places in the world, and I feel like that's got to count for something at least. Now let's look at my favorite pro of all, which is the natural beauty and diversity of our landscapes. The US has over 3 million square miles, and that means we have basically every biome you can imagine. You want mountains? Colorado. You want beaches? California. You want deserts? Arizona, Utah, Nevada. Forests and lakes? Minnesota. We even have tropical vibes. You can go over to Puerto Rico or Hawaii. And you can get this all without leaving the country. We have some of the best national parks in the world, and honestly, it's one of the best things America has done. It's thanks to Theodore Roosevelt, my G. If you look at our national parks like Yosemite, Yellowstone, or Grand Canyons, these are some of the bucket list destinations for people all over the world, and we're lucky to have them right in our backyard, or a 3 or 4 hour flight from us. For all of our issues, the US really gives you a front row access to some of the most stunning and natural sights on Earth, and you don't need a passport to see them. Unless you're coming from outside the US, then you probably do need a passport. Another massive pro of living in the US, and something I think a lot of us take for granted, at least one half of us, is our cultural diversity. If you walk down a street in a city like Chicago, New York, or LA, you can probably hear 5 different languages, smell food from 10 different countries, and see traditions from 100 different backgrounds, all in the same afternoon. Honestly, one of my favorite parts about living here is the food. You can eat authentic Mexican tacos for lunch, grab Thai for dinner, and then end the night with Italian pastries without ever leaving your neighborhood. And it's not just about the food, it's about the art, the music, the fashion, and ways of thinking all mixed together. This is why we were originally called the melting pot of the world, which is why we should keep calling ourselves that, but we don't like it for some reason. We gotta get back to that. In the US, you can celebrate Chinese New Year in February, Holi in March, and Juneteenth in June, and Dia de los Muertos in November, all without having to get on a plane, which is very rare in most countries, and it makes life a lot richer here and more exciting. Being around people from so many different walks of life really opens your mind. You learn empathy, you challenge your own assumptions, and you get exposed to ideas you might never have considered otherwise. Which is why it's crazy why we're trying to kick out immigrants out of this country, right? But to each their own, I guess. As a first gen myself, I felt this firsthand. Growing up, I had friends from completely different cultures, and it shaped the way I saw the world. It's like living in one country, but getting a little taste of everywhere all at the same time. So yeah, we've got problems here, but one thing America does have better than most is bringing the world together in one place, and that for me is very priceless. Now, I know all these things sound pretty legit, and honestly, it is. The opportunities, the food, the nature, the people. America really can feel like the land of dreams. But here's the thing, dreams aren't cheap. They're not cheap. And living here sometimes comes with a price tag you don't see right away. I remember when I first started living here on my own, I was enjoying all these pros, trying new foods every week, going to concerts, exploring national parks. Life felt great until I got sick one weekend and I had to go to urgent care. And you know what? That cost me a pretty buck, bro. That cost me a couple thousand right there. So let's talk about the cons a little bit and the parts of living in the US that can be very stressful, costly, and sometimes just frustrating. Now let's look at the bane of my existence, and a lot of people might share this, the healthcare system. It's awful, bro. It's awful. Around 8% of Americans are uninsured. That means 26 million people are paying the full fucking price of their healthcare. Like, goddamn, man. You know how much it costs to go to the emergency room? Well, I don't either, so I had to look it up. But on average, an emergency room visit costs anywhere between $2,400 to $2,600 without insurance. Listen, I've been there. Skipping meds, stressing over bills, it feels like you're playing Russian roulette with your health or your bank account. Both suck, but we're still playing it, right? Because that's what it costs to live in America. And it sucks even more when you learn that other countries in the world are not doing this because it's not something you earn, but it's a basic human need. I'm not saying this is a deal breaker for me. For many it is, but I would just consider this when you're thinking about moving to the United States. All right, let's talk about something that stresses out almost every young person in America at some point. College. College. In the US, a degree isn't just a piece of paper. It's often a financial ball and chain that you carry around for decades. According to the College Board, the average cost for a 4-year degree at a public university is now around $10,700 per year for in-state students. So if you're looking to move into the United States, you got to look at the out-of-state cost, which is $27,000 per year. And that's just tuition. If you add housing, food, books, fees, you're probably looking around more like $25,000 to $40K per year. And that's if you don't live at home. Private universities, forget about it, dude. That's like $50K per year. Because of these costs, about 43 million Americans are paying off student loans to this day. And the average borrower owes around $37,000. When you compare this to other countries like Germany, Norway, or even Mexico, where tuition is free or much cheaper, it's fucking wild. You can literally get world-class education abroad for the price of a single semester here. And the cost of living is probably cheaper too. So depending on where you go, you're probably staying a lot more with a tuition and living there. So yeah, higher education can open a lot of doors, but in the US, those doors come with a monthly bill. It's like graduating with a diploma on one hand and then an OIS on the other. So if you want to go to college in America, think about that twice. All right, let's say you survive college debt and healthcare debt. You got a career going and you just bought a house. Maybe you're thinking about starting a family. Well, think again, because raising a child is basically the same thing as taking on a second mortgage. If you want to work and want to get childcare, the average center-based daycare will cost you around $13,000 per year for one child. Sometimes they'll give you a 2-for-1 discount, but that's pretty rare. According to the first 5-year fund, the last year alone, childcare costs jumped 7%, and that's not even counting inflation. From birth to 18 years old, the cost of an average child has gone up to $297,674 in the US, and that's not including college. That's about 22% of your annual income every year for nearly 2 decades. And then the administration thought that a measly $5K could help with child costs. Give me a fucking break, bro. I've had moments where I look at these numbers and think, if one kid costs this much, I might have to stick it to being the fun uncle or a cat or dog parent. Because, man, I love kids, but I also love being able to pay rent and live my life the way I want to. So yeah, raising a family can be very amazing, but financially, it's one of the biggest challenges Americans face. And the crazy part for a lot of parents, the decision isn't just about whether they want kids, it's whether they can actually afford them. And again, if you want to live in America, these are some of the realistic challenges they're going to be facing. All right, so the last thing I'll be talking about, and this one hits differently depending on who you ask, but politics in the United States. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to agree on everything. According to history, that's pretty much impossible anyways. But the frustrating part is how disconnected a lot of political leaders feel from everyday Americans. It's like they're playing a different game with politics, while the rest of us just want cheaper healthcare and want to achieve the American dream. The US is more politically divided now than it's been in decades, and that division filters down into our communities, our workplaces, and even our families. Sometimes it feels like you can't even have a regular conversation without it turning into an argument. Whether it's cheaper healthcare, education, and economy, there are moments when it feels like people are in charge of making decisions that don't reflect the reality of a lot of Americans. And yeah, I personally think that the president right now isn't helping much with that. And a lot of the policies seem more about winning political points than actually fixing issues. Like, who cares if this building is named after Trump? I just want to live in a life where I don't have to worry about a dude tweeting about how America is great again. For me, I felt really disconnected when they passed the big, beautiful bill where they were cutting Medicaid and lowering the amount you can take out on federal loans for education. It was kind of a slap in the face. Like, do they even know what it's like living on a normal salary right now? So after that, there you have it, my top 5 pros and cons of living in the United States. I might have cried a little bit while recording this, but that's fine. At the end of the day, no country is perfect. The US has incredible opportunities, just jaw-dropping natural beauty and cultural diversity you won't find in a lot of places. But it also comes with challenges that can test your patience, your wallet, and your work-life balance. So for me, it's about knowing both sides and making the most of the good while being prepared for the not so great, and honestly, I think that's true no matter where you live. I'd love to hear from you. What's your biggest pro or con about living in the US? Please drop in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. I'd love to talk with y'all. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Or for more honest takes on lifestyles and life in general, Share with a friend who's curious about the American experience. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.